Good morning, everyone, and welcome to OLC4O. Today is November 23rd, 2022. I'm your instructor, Mike Laverty, and this is class number 7. We are covering Unit 1, Lesson 2, and we're going to finish off talking about assignment number 9. That's the journal entry at the end of assignment number 9. So we are in week 2 of classes. We're about a month away from our holiday break, where we'll have 2 weeks. We'll have 2 weeks of no classes. And our last day of class is January 26, 2023. That'll be the last day of broadcast for OLC4O. This course will be broadcast in term 2B. So looking ahead to April. But OLC4O is offered twice, and we're in the first course of it in this school year. These are the ways you can tune in live. So the course runs live from 10 a.m. to 10:55 Central Standard Time. These are the 4 ways you can participate. If you can't watch live, then of course you look for me online by typing in Laverty Wassa in the search bar on YouTube. You will find my channel, and you'll find a playlist with all of the OLC4O videos that you can watch anytime you want. You've got multiple ways to submit work, to get work to myself and your other teachers at WASA. Just have a moment to scan that. Look at all the options you have to get work to us. And, if you have any questions at any time, reach out to your DEC. Reach out to your learning center. Never hurts to ask a question. And, of course, you can reach out to me anytime you want. So you can email me, send me a Facebook message, add me as a friend on Facebook, or you can phone one of these 2 numbers, the second of which is a toll-free long-distance number, so you're not getting any long-distance charges. But if you're in the Sioux Lookout area, you can phone the first number. You can phone me 9 to 3. I will be at my desk Monday through Friday. And this is where I think you should be at so far in the course. So read the first 35 pages of Unit 1. That's assignments 1 through 9. So after today's class, we will have covered assignments 1 through 9 in a lot of detail. And then we're going to go ahead on Thursday, tomorrow's class, I'm going to give a recap of Unit 1, Unit 2. We're just going to give an overview, make sure we didn't miss anything, talk about a few things. And then starting on Monday, this coming Monday, we're going to go on to Unit 1, Lesson 3. And then we should spend most of next week finishing off Unit 1. And then the following week, the week after that, we should be jumping up to Unit 2. And you should have completed assignments 1 to 5 by now, and you should have started working on assignments 6 through 9. All right, today's lesson. We'll look at the words of the day. We'll look at a headline. Today's punctuation will be quotation marks. Our part of speech that we look at in closer detail will be adjectives. And we'll look at Unit 1, Lesson 2, Assignment 9, which is the last assignment in Unit 2. Sorry, the last assignment in Lesson 2, and it's a journal entry. So our learning goals for today are to review the 9 parts of speech. We will learn the definition of an adjective. We will learn about the proper use of quotation marks. There they are again. And we will review the writing process. OLC4O, as I have mentioned on many occasions, is a writing course. It's a course that asks you to become a reader and an editor, but those 2 things lead to becoming a good writer or a great writer, right? If you want to be a proficient writer, if you want to increase your writing skills, you have to read. You have to read a lot of different kinds of texts. And you have to learn how to work with words, right? So through this course, I've been really trying to push that message that, you know, sometimes writing can seem like a magical thing, and in a lot of ways it is. You sit down and you just invent stories, or the words come out of you. But as a lot of us know, sometimes it's not that easy, and it's hard to generate ideas, and we can get frustrated. But writing is a process, and a big part of that process is just moving words around, changing word choices, making lots of decisions, making lots of choices. And it's easy to make choices when you have a lot of stuff to work with, right? So it's that two-part process where we just generate ideas and we don't worry about them making sense, and then we come back and we edit them and we fine-tune them. And so we're going to talk about that writing process today. And so we'll know we're successful if we can understand the definition of an adjective, if we can learn how to use a quotation mark properly, keyword properly, and we'll know we're successful if we can complete assignment 9. And I'll also say, you know, or assignment 2, 3, or 5 from this unit, because those are also writing assignments. So if you can complete one of those assignments by using the 5 steps of the writing process, you'll know you've been successful. So there's our success criteria for today. All right, so we've done love, wisdom, respect, bravery, honesty, humility, and now the final 7 grandfather teaching, as mentioned in the first couple of pages in this unit. We'll talk about the truth. And as you see right there, the truth is to know all of these things. So the truth is to sort of keep all of these teachings in your mind and your heart at all times. And it's represented by the turtle. I mentioned a couple of days ago that my aunt is an adult educator, and one of her former students, this gentleman here, Henry Goldman, he created this artwork and gave it to her as a present. So I thought that was a really cool story, and I wanted to share those. So just using those with her permission. So so we got Debwewin, or truth in English, is to know all of the teachings. And going into some further detail on that, we've got to speak only to the extent we have lived or experienced, commonly referred to as the truth. So that's an interesting concept, to speak only to the extent that we have lived or experienced. So truth in that context is to speak only in the way that we have lived or experienced or have seen, right? So it's to be true to what we have actually seen, to what we have actually experienced, not to fabricate things or to distort things, but to speak the way that we have seen it. And that means the good and the bad. I think that's sort of my interpretation of this teaching, right? So it's to speak the truth about our own lives, the good and the bad, other people in our lives. So, and if we look at the dictionary definition of truth, we get three definitions. We've got the true or actual state of the matter, conformity with fact or reality, or a truth is a verified or indisputable fact. So, you know, indisputable means you can't argue with it. Veri comes from the Latin veritas, which is the truth. It's undisputable, can't be argued. It's a proposition, a principle, an idea. It's something that we can't argue on. It's the truth. It's beyond argument. It's just out there. Now, looking at the definition of the word, we see that it comes from the Old English. And when we're talking about Old English, you're talking about English that was spoken, you know, this is a rough guideline, but, you know, like 600 AD, maybe even before that, to like, you know, 800, you know, to like a, you know, like this, that's Old English, right? And if you actually hear someone speak Old English, it sounds a lot like German. Or if you've ever seen the show Vikings, which is one of my favorite shows, it goes back to that time. And it sounds very Germanic. It sounds very rough. And we've got two words. We've got trywith, trueth, or try. And those words mean faithfulness, constancy, loyal, steadfast. So that was the old definition of truth. It means loyalty and faithfulness. And that ties in with the seven grandfather teaching of only speaking as you've seen it, as you've experienced it. Truth in that sense is being loyal, being steadfast, being constant to what you've experienced, right? Not changing the story, you know, telling the story as it is, not changing it, being faithful to what you've really experienced. So you can see how truth and faithfulness and constancy and loyalty and steadfast are related concepts. From that word, we get a great word, trueborn, which is genuinely or authentically so because of birth. So the king has no trueborn sons. So, you know, a lot of words in English and a lot of words in Ojibwe and Anishinaabe are words that are two words that have been fused together to make a new word. I also like to give you some literary terms, and this one's from poetry, but this is also from hip hop, or if you're interested in that genre of music. There's different kinds of rhymes. There's full rhymes or true rhymes. There's half rhymes. So today we're talking about a true rhyme. And that's a rhyme in which the stressed vowel and all following consonants and vowels are identical. But the consonants preceding the rhyming vowels are different. So in this case, our rhyming vowel in that first case is the AI, right? A, which makes the A like the ain, brain, drain, chain, train. So the AI is the rhyming vowel, and then everything after it, in this case the N, these all have the N on the end. But the preceding, what comes before, you know, preceding means before, everything that comes before the rhyming vowel, the preceding is different, right? So we've got BR, but we've got DR, C, T, R. So these are all true rhymes. And the same goes for the other one, right? So in this case, you've got the O. That's the rhyming vowel sound, the O, long O, pole, O, pole. So we got pole, stole, parole, hole, roll, hole, dole, brain, drain, chain, train, rain, slain, gain, right? So those are what we call true rhymes. And maybe later in the chorus we can come back to this concept and look at some other forms of rhymes. But you can see how it's again, there's that concept of being faithful to the original. It's a slight change, but this AI is constant and faithful throughout the whole chain of words. Here's a couple of quotes I pulled up about the truth. If you do not tell the truth about yourself, you cannot tell it about other people. Virginia Woolf. Truth, like gold, is to be obtained not by its growth, but by washing away from all that is not gold. Leo Tolstoy. And three things cannot be long hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. Now you see from this example, you've got our friend the colon. And remember, colons are used to set up lists. So when the Buddha is making this quote, he's setting up a list. He's telling us there's three things you can't hide for long, and they are the sun, the moon, and the truth. There are times when we can't see the sun at night. There are times when we can't see the moon, usually during the day. Obviously, sometimes you can see the moon and the sun at the same time, but they're often hidden from us. And the truth. So the truth, sometimes we can't see it, but it's still there. It's still constant. It's always there. You may not be able to see it, but it's always there. Yeah, so I do like these truths, and you need to tell the truth about yourself before you can tell it about other people. And when we go into today's assignment, assignment number 9 really speaks to this little nugget of wisdom, right? Telling the truth about ourselves, which is hard to do. Telling the truth about yourself is really hard to do. It's hard to think about, let alone write about your weaknesses and ways you need to be better. It's a lot easier to talk about other people and ways that they need to be better. But yeah, that's what we're going to look at today. We're going to look at telling the truth about ourselves, in the hopes that we can, be better and do things that we want to do and need to do. So today's punctuation mark is the quotation mark. Quotation marks come in 2 varieties. They come in the double and they come in the single variety. The double quotation mark is the one that we most commonly use. And it's most commonly used to show or set apart words that come from somebody else. Key concept, somebody else. They don't come from you. This is a way that you can avoid plagiarism. This is a way that you can avoid being accused of stealing somebody else's words. And that's one of the main reasons we use this, is to say, I didn't say this, somebody else did. So we use quotation marks when we're quoting from books, from movies, from conversations we might have with people. These can be, as the kids say, at least my kids, IRL conversations in real life. They can be online conversations. You can quote Facebook messages. It's possible. So conversations, poems, other sources. We also use the double quotation marks when we're discussing a part of a bigger work, such as a chapter, an episode of a TV show, a song. So, a chapter is a small part of a bigger work, a novel. An episode of a TV show is a bigger part of a season or an entire show. A song is usually part of an album. An article published in a magazine or a newspaper is just one small part of a bigger thing. So we use the double quotation marks to talk about the small thing, and then we use italics, usually, to talk about the big thing. So my favorite episode of Seinfeld, you see how Seinfeld is in italics? Seinfeld is the whole TV show. All nine seasons, every episode, it's the whole body of work. And my favorite episode, which is true, is the Merv Griffin Show. And the Merv Griffin Show is in quotation marks, because the Merv Griffin Show is one episode of the show, so it's in quotation marks. So we use quotation marks when we use direct quotation. So in this case, I have used quotation marks in both ways. So I've used quotation marks to designate the chapter 1 of the novel Jimmy Comes Home. And you see how Jimmy Comes Home is in italics? Jimmy Comes Home is the novel. It's been placed in italics. And chapter 1, Coming Home, has been placed in quotation marks. So the last sentence of chapter 1, Coming Home, in Jimmy Comes Home, describes Jimmy's thoughts as he hugs his snowmobile. And then I've used that colon to set up my quote. And my quote begins with my double quotation mark right here. He knew that in a couple of months he'd be headed out across the snow. And of course it ends. So quotation marks operate just like brackets, right? You never open a bracket without closing a bracket, right? If you're doing math and you open a bracket and don't close it, that's incorrect. Same with English, right? So quotation marks have to come in pairs. They're never by themselves. There's always an opening quotation mark and a closing quotation mark, right? The particular font I'm using here only has the same kind of quotation mark, but usually they kind of slant to the end, like they slant inwards, sort of like a bracket. So here's an important rule. We capitalize the first letter of the quote when we're quoting a full sentence, all right? So when we're quoting a full sentence from a textbook, we use that capital H in this case, right? The capital H for he. We put a double quotation mark at the start of the quote and at the end of the quote. And we put the appropriate punctuation mark before the last double quotation mark. So right here, the quotation mark goes inside. It goes inside the quotation mark, right? So it's period and then the quotation mark. It looks a bit weird at first, but that's the way it goes. You know, so you don't go snow, quotation mark, period, right? That is wrong. You would go snow, quotation mark, sorry, punctuation mark, and then bracket. So the punctuation mark comes before, and the quotation mark comes after. The only exception to this rule would be is if I'm going to put a citation in there. So if I'm going to go like this, I'm going to say snow, quotation mark, and then I'm going to go bracket, page 7. Then the period comes over here, okay? That's the way that works, okay? That's the exception to that rule. But if there's no citation, and a citation is when you put a specific page number, it tells the reader where to go in that book or website, magazine, whatever, then you do it like that. Otherwise, the quotation, sorry, the punctuation goes inside the quotation mark. So here we are using the full quotation. So we can either quote somebody in full, or we can use part of what they said, not the full sentence. So here's an example using the full quotation. The waitress cleared a few more orders, then came over to our table and said, "You need to leave in 10 minutes because we close soon," right? So when somebody says something, you usually use a comma. Sometimes you might use a comma, or you might use you could use either one, the comma or the colon, but you set up the quotation and then you say what they said. You need to leave in 10 minutes because we close soon, right? Period, quotation mark. Now, I could rewrite that sentence and I could change it, so now I'm only going to use part of what that person said, not a full sentence. The waitress told the customers they needed to, quote, leave in 10 minutes because the restaurant was closing soon. Now you see, leave in 10 minutes is right there. Those are 4 words the waitress actually said. I just rearranged how I wrote it in my sentence, right? Because the restaurant was closing soon. So in that case, I used a lowercase l. I didn't capitalize what she said because I'm quoting her in mid-sentence. So that's the way you want to do that too, okay? And when you quote someone, the whole point of quoting someone is that you say exactly what they said. Sometimes you can paraphrase what somebody said. So if I quote you, that means that's exactly what you said. So a quote is exactly what someone said. So if somebody writes a newspaper article about me, or if somebody writes a website article or something in the public that's about me, and they're quoting what I said, they better say exactly what I said, or else I'm going to get really upset, right? That's the whole point of a quotation. A quotation is when you say exactly what somebody said. Now, a paraphrase, when we paraphrase someone, that's when we put, let's see, we put their words into our words. So when you paraphrase someone, you change the words they said, you put them into your own words, but the really important part about that is you can't change the meaning, right? You cannot change, you can't take what they said and try to alter it and not tell the truth, right? You have to be faithful and constant with the truth, right? You have to And a lot of times we do this as writers. We paraphrase an idea, and we we shorten it. Like usually when you paraphrase, you're doing it because someone has used a whole paragraph to say something, and when you paraphrase it, you're just doing the short version. But you got to keep the original meaning intact, okay? Now, we use single quotation marks when we quote from a text that is already in double quotation marks. So this line, Jimmy asked Martha, his grandmother, "Where did you get moose from?" That's what Jimmy said in the text, okay? So the double quotation mark tells me I'm quoting from a book right here, and the single quotation tells me it's a line of dialogue from the book. So in this way we get sort of like brackets within brackets, right? We're getting a quote within a quote, right? I'm quoting a passage from the novel that was already in quotation marks. So instead of having double quotation marks, for clarity, we use the single. And that's why we do that here. So there's 1, 2, 3, right? You see that? There's 1, 2. There's actually 3 punctuation marks, or 3, three little, actually, sorry, that's confusing. There is 2 punctuation marks. I have a single quotation mark and I have a double quotation mark, right? But they're all put together, but that's what that means, okay? You also do this when they're referencing a song or another short work. So Shelley walked up to the DJ booth and she yelled, "Play Rasputin." The song Rasputin is in single quotation marks. What she said, "Play Rasputin," is in double quotation marks, right? So the double quotation marks capture what Shelley said. The single quotation marks capture the song she referenced, in this case, Rasputin, right? And you'll notice that the exclamation mark comes before the double, but it comes after the single. So that's just how that works. It gets a little tricky, but the more you do it, it becomes a lot easier to do. Here's today's headline. Sioux Lookout residential school survivor shares fears regarding new legislation. So Sioux Lookout's Garnet Anjikaneb, a survivor of Pelican Lake Indian Residential School, said he is fearful that a legislative change may see him sent away from the community. So this is a real story that appeared a few weeks ago in the Sioux Lookout Bulletin, the local paper here in Sioux Lookout, along with the Wawate News. So if we look at that headline, we've got all of the nouns, all of the things that name a person, a place, or a thing. Those are all outlined in blue. Verbs are in green, prepositions in red, adjectives in orange. So Sioux Lookout, capital S, capital L, is a proper noun. It's a specific place. So we capitalize it, right? So Sioux Lookout is a noun. Residential school survivor. Now I've grouped that as a noun because it's a thing, right? So we're going to talk about this in the next couple of slides, where residential school is a noun that modifies survivors. So you could almost say that these two are an adjective, but in this case I'm calling it a noun phrase, right? So I've grouped it all as one idea, right? It functions like a noun in this sentence. Shares is what he did. And what did he share? He shared fears regarding, which means same thing as about, new legislation. So the government's coming out with legislation, but it's not legislation that's been around for a long time. It is new legislation. So adjectives always modify nouns. They don't modify anything else. They only modify nouns. In this case, it's modifying this noun. So new legislation. And you see how those kind of get grouped together. as a pair. We never have an adjective on its own. It's always referencing or modifying something else. So an adjective modifies or qualifies a noun. Adjectives also describe the quantity or the amount of nouns. So very important concept, right? So an adjective can give us a different idea about a noun, right? So, you know, think about the word chair, right? And what image pops into your mind when I say chair? You might picture an office chair or a antique wooden chair or one of those cheap plastic folding chairs. You might picture a bar stool, right? How many chairs are there in the world? There's thousands or if not millions of different designs, right? What if I say a small children's chair? Then the picture in your mind is way more specific, right? Or if I say 10 plastic black chairs, right? You should have a pretty specific idea in your mind. Or a gigantic wooden chair, right? Those are all adjectives. They tell us what something looks like. And remember, these are like the 5 senses. What something looks like, what it smells like, what it tastes like, what it feels like, what it sounds like, what it looks like, what it sounds like, what it tastes like, what it smells like, and what it feels like, and how many of it there is, and which one it is. So we'll go into that in detail. So the most common way, this is probably the number one way, when we think about adjectives, they modify a noun. So Aiden scored a beautiful goal in the 3rd period, right? So in this case, he didn't just score a goal, he scored a beautiful goal. He didn't score it in any period, he scored it in the 3rd period. That's right? So beautiful qualifies or modifies the noun. 3rd tells me, the number or what order it came in, right? My favorite band is Guns N' Roses, right? So what kind of band is it? It's my favorite band. She packed 5 black t-shirts for her trip. So they weren't just t-shirts, they were black t-shirts, and there wasn't one of them, there was 5 of them. So black tells me what kind of t-shirt, 5 tells me how many. We opened the door and found a messy hotel room, right? So messy modifies hotel room. And also hotel modifies room as well, right? So it's not just a room, it's a hotel room. And it's not just a hotel room, it's a messy hotel room. We have comparative adjectives, right? So they're used to make comparisons, right? So this is a cold evening. That's an absolute comparison, right? We have comparative adjectives. So tonight is colder than last night. And then we have the superlative, right? So tomorrow might be the coldest night of the year. So cold just tells me that something is a certain way. Comparative tells me it's colder than something else. In this case, it's colder than last night. And superlative, remember super means great or greatest. Superman is the greatest man, right? So tomorrow might be the coldest night of the year. And by definition, if it's the coldest night, there can't be anything colder. And then we have coordinate adjectives, and these are multiple adjectives, 2 or more, that modify the same noun. This is going to be a long, cold winter. So long and cold modify winter. So when that happens, when we have one noun and we have more than one adjective that modify it, then we put a comma in the middle, or we use the word and. So it's a long and cold winter, or it's a long and cold winter, or it's a cold and long winter. But the example at the bottom, this is going to be a long cold winter. That's incorrect. So if the 2 adjectives modify the same thing, you've got to put a comma in between them, or you've got to put the word and in between them. Both are acceptable. Now, of course, English is known for its exceptions. Here it is. So even though old and leather in this example are both adjectives that modify boots, we consider leather boots to be a noun phrase that is modified by the word old, okay? In the same sense that a cold winter, you know, we don't really see it as it's sort of like it's winter is its own concept. So, and this is debatable, right? You know, all winters are cold, you know, but in this case, winter is I would argue that winter stands alone as a concept, and we can use long and cold to modify winter. Whereas in these cases, you know, leather boots is one thing that is modified by the word old, right? So it would be incorrect to say my old, comma, leather boots. We would just say my old leather boots. Demonstrative adjectives, they demonstrate something. They tell us about something specific. So we have this coffee is cold, that coffee is hot. These jokes are the funniest I've ever heard. Those people over there are my friends. So in this case, it's the word this modifies coffee. The word that modifies coffee. These modifies jokes. And those modify people. But sometimes those same words are used as pronouns. They stand in place. Remember, a pronoun stands in place of another noun. So my sister bought me a new pair of shoes. I really like them. So in this case, them is not modifying something. Them is standing in place for new pair of shoes. Right? So instead of saying my sister bought me a new pair of shoes, I really like my new pair of shoes, I just say them. So in this case, the word them is a pronoun. So it gets confusing, but the more you do it, the more it makes sense. Words are always dependent on context. Okay, context is key. How you use a word will change what part of speech it is. So there's some quotation marks again, right? There's an example of the punctuation mark coming at the end of the sentence. It's a couple of examples on how we can quote the text. In this case, Jimmy comes home. So we can incorporate it into our own words. So I can write a sentence and I can just put the sentence in there. You see how it's lowercase s, lowercase a. Or I can set the text up as a separate quote. And usually when I do that, I'm using the colon or the comma. And then in this case, it's the capital A because I'm quoting the full sentence, okay? Are you going to stay here or go away again, Jimmy? All right, so we're going to spend the next 50 minutes, last part of today's class, talking about assignment 9 in more detail. Remember, it's asking you to write 3 paragraphs. Each paragraph should be at least 5 sentences long in length, okay? So each paragraph is 5 sentences, and that's going to get you 250 to 300 words. So I want you to get your pencil out, or if you're typing on a computer, use the review tool, whether you're using Word or Notepad, or Google Docs. There's a tool feature, and it's usually under review, and it allows you to look at the word count. Also, if you like highlight a whole bunch of text and right click on it, one of the options should be word count, and it'll tell you how many words are in there. So keep track of how many words are in each paragraph, each assignment. So you're writing 3 paragraphs, and those are the general concepts. Being an active participant, improving your literacy skills, and your willingness to reflect and learn from your mistakes. Okay, so that's the topic, okay? So step 1, you answer the following in point form. Are you an active participant? Why or why not? Tell me how confident you are in terms of improving your skills, 1 through 10. Why do you feel that way? And how are you persistent? And what are your study habits? And how can you develop a willingness to reflect and learn from your mistakes? So step one, we're going to answer those things in point form. Okay? So I'm going to do that right now with you, okay? So I'm even going to do this in the rap rock, okay? I'm going to go, I'm going to say yes. We can change this later, but I'm going to say yes, I am an active participant. Why or why not, okay? So yes, I do believe I'm an active participant in my own learning. And then, you know, why? And then I'm going to jot down some points here. And I'm just going to say, I enjoy reading, learning new things. I've seen what learning can do for me. And maybe, I know what happens, when I'm not active. Right? So just quickly, jot down, answer the question, yes, I think I'm an active participant. And why? Well, here's some reasons, okay? Paragraph number 2 says, how confident are you in terms of improving your literacy skills on a scale of 1 to 10? And why do you feel that way? Okay, so paragraph 2, we're going to erase what I wrote there. So, how confident am I that I can improve my literacy skills? And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm pretty confident. I'm pretty confident that I can. But here's the thing. If I went back in time, like say 15, 20 years ago, I'd be really low. I would have no confidence that I could change my literacy skills. I'd be pretty low. I wouldn't have much confidence in my abilities. But through a lot of trial and error and a lot of struggles, I'm going to give myself an 8. That's that's my level. That's my level of confidence, right? And for the reasons I just told you, I'm going to say, I know what it's like to not feel confident. So I have a comparison point. I'm going to say, I have many things to be proud of that I've achieved, right? And I would say, I have learned many skills, and I'm confident that I can learn more. I love reading books about the brain. I love reading about ways that we learn. And one of the concepts that I love reading about and that I love telling people about is the concept of plasticity, right? So the idea that you have a plastic brain, okay? And when we say we've got plastic brains, all that means is that our brains can be molded and we can change who we are. We're not stuck as the way that we are, right? We're not just stuck as ways. So when you give yourself an identity, like when you say, I'm not good at math, I'm not good at reading, I'm not good at writing, you sort of fix yourself in this like frozen state, which is not true. It's not faithful to the reality of the situation. Nobody is stuck a certain way. We can all change who we are, right? And it might take a long time. It might be hard to do, but you can change who you are, and you can develop new skills, right? So, and it might seem cheesy or kind of corny to think about it, but having a positive attitude about that change, look, I spelled paragraph wrong. it's gonna make you successful, right? So that's what I would do there. I would say I'm an 8. And how are you persistent? What are your study practice habits? How can you develop a willingness to reflect and learn from your mistakes in this course, right? So, so for paragraph 3, it's talking about, you know, what's my willingness to become better, to deal with my own mistakes. You know, I would say, and I mentioned this yesterday, especially when you do point form, I would recommend doing this for paragraph 3. What are your good habits? What are your bad habits? Okay? Just for the sake of time, I'm not going to do them, but, you know, so list them. List your good habits. List your bad habits. And then maybe, so list your bad habits and then list how you can work on them. Be specific. Always be specific, right? List your good habits and then tell me how they help you. And then maybe see if you can draw some connections between the two. How are your good habits and your bad habits related? Okay? All right, once you've got step 1 out of the way, and remember, step 1 is point form, jotting down random ideas, just answering the questions yes or no, jotting down some immediate thoughts, what comes to your mind. Now, step 2, we're going to get into some free writing, okay? So you're going to spend 5 minutes free writing on each of your 3 paragraphs. So you can do one 15-minute session and get it all out of the way, or just chunk it up, but I want you to spend 5 minutes on each of your paragraphs. You're going to use your point form notes to guide your writing and keep you focused. So what I would suggest is you have 1 page of notes in front of you, and you have 1 page of a blank piece of paper in front of you. So you have your notes right there, and you look at the notes. So if you get stuck and you can't write, go to your notes and then just start writing. Set a timer or just use a watch for at least 5 minutes. Start your timer and write as many words as you can before the time runs out. Don't stop, just let the words flow. Becoming a writer is a lot like becoming an athlete or becoming a sculptor, a painter, a dancer, a craftsperson, someone who makes things. The first time you do it, it's awkward and weird, and you have to learn new movements, and it seems like awkward and you can't do it. But if you do it enough times, you're trying to make things be automatic. You're trying to get to a state where things become automatic. You just do it. You set the timer, boom. One thing I should mention is you might want, if that's okay, you might want to listen to some music, right? Myself personally, I listen to instrumental music. DJ Shadow is one of my favorite artists. I listen to him all the time. If I put on one of his records called Introducing, my brain is just wired to write to that music. As soon as the drums kick in, it's like, okay, boom, it's time to write. Because my brain just associates that music with writing. So you might want to try that. So that is step 2. You're going to do your free write. I don't have time to actually do it with you, but I'm going to keep on moving. Now, once you've done your point form, once you've done some free writing, you've got a lot of raw material to work with. So remember, step 1, we plan. Step 2, we write. We generate raw material. Step 3, we revise. So Now I want you to take your point form notes from step 1 and what you wrote. Now I want you to try to find the main idea of the theme. And this is going to be the main idea or theme of each paragraph, right? Each paragraph is going to have a main theme or a main idea, right? Then I want you to identify your strongest ideas and other ones. You want to develop them further. And you might want to use the RAPROC method. RAPROC is, of course, our wonderful acronym, which tells us to restate the problem, answer the problem, prove it with examples, relate, make connections, give your opinion, and conclude it. Last week we looked at organizing our paragraphs. So when you write a paragraph, it's important to kind of give an example, right? So every one of these is going to be a sentence, okay? So you can use, this is a very good outline you can use. So in sentence number 1, for paragraph number 1, you're going to tell me, answer the question. I am not an active learner in my participant because I struggle with something, right? That's sentence number 1. Sentence, I would say, sentences 2 to 4 are going to be where you prove that. So prove to me that you're not an active participant. And then make connections to yourself and the world and other things, right? So you're going to give me 2 to 4 sentences that prove to me why you're not an active participant. And then sentence number 5 or 6, depending on how much writing you want to do, is going to give your opinion. It's going to sum everything up, and it's going to conclude it, and it's going to say, for the reasons listed above, I am not an active student, right? So in here, you're sort of filling in the blanks. I have to write a paragraph. That paragraph is going to be 6 sentences long, and sentence 1 is going to be about this. Sentence 2 and 4 are going to be about this, and my last sentence is going to do this, right? So you're not just going into this thing with a blank piece of paper. When it comes time to actually write your rough copy or your final copy, depending on the assignment, you've got a plan and you're following that plan, right? So you have a roadmap. You know where you want to go, all right? So, and then if we're looking at like a blank outline, you need to give yourself a sentence prompt. So, you could even do this. A sentence about why I am not an active participant, right? I need to write 1 sentence about why I am not an active participant. I need to write 3 sentences that prove why sentence 1 is true. Okay? And then I need to write 1 sentence that, wraps things up. And if we're really good, sets up paragraph number 2, okay? So that's going to be my plan, okay? So we don't have time to go into, steps 4 and 5, but we'll come back to that tomorrow. But that should give you a pretty good strategy for attacking assignment number 9. And we'll see you back tomorrow.